In 1846, deep within the mist-covered hills of rural Pennsylvania, a girl was born Margaret Thorne. She didn't speak until she was 5. She didn't cry at birth. She didn't blink when stared at. Some whispered she was divine. Others thought she was cursed. But one thing was clear. Science couldn't explain her, ... And yet somehow she became a symbol of freedom. For a world that had no words for what she could do. Cue eerie music swell. Title card fades in. Margaret Thorne, the girl science couldn't explain. She sold freedom. Intro 132-30 Narrator VO. This is not just the story of a girl, it's the story of a mystery lost to history. A girl who walked between the lines of life and death, seen and unseen, body and spirit. Some called her a prophet, others a fraud. But to those who met her, she was something else entirely. We dug through newspaper clippings, medical records, and town ledgers. What we found doesn't just challenge science, it challenges belief itself. Let's go back to 1846, Part 1. A child unlike any other to 30 to 6 o'clock. Narrator VO. Margaret Thorne was born in the village of Oakenbridge, Pennsylvania. From birth, midwives said she didn't cry. Her mother, Catherine Thorne, reportedly whispered, "She's not of this world." Margaret didn't speak until age 5, but when she did, she spoke in Latin, a language no one had taught her. Dr. Elias Granger noted in his journal, "This child stares as if she sees beyond the walls. Her temperature runs cold, and her pupils do not respond to light. She was immune to illness." When cholera swept through in 1852, nearly half the town perished. Margaret remained untouched. But that's just the beginning. Part 2. The dreams that moved people. 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Narrator VO. At age 10, Margaret began drawing, but not simple drawings, maps of places that didn't yet exist. One map depicted a railway system exact to what would later become the Pennsylvania Railroad. She'd never left her village, and then the dreams began. Villagers came to her, saying she visited them in their sleep. One farmer claimed, "She came to me, told me where to dig. I found water I'd been looking for since I was a boy." They called her the Liberty Whisperer, because wherever she went, people made decisions that freed them from suffering. Some left abusive marriages, some freed enslaved persons. Some simply left town and became wealthy. Whatever it was, Margaret sold something no one could see. Freedom. Part 3. Science takes notice. 9 o'clock to 13 o'clock. Narrator VO. By 1857, newspapers in Philadelphia had caught wind of Margaret. Mysterious girl heals without touch, sees without sight. A group of scientists from Boston visited her. What they found baffled them. They performed tests. No reaction to pain. But Margaret described their movements without seeing them. When blindfolded, she could still identify every object placed in her hands, even though she had never seen before. One scientist, Dr. Horace Delling, wrote, "There is no known phenomenon to explain Miss Thorne's awareness. She moves as though time is irrelevant. We leave more confused than we arrived." Their report was suppressed. The scientists were discredited, and Margaret vanished for nearly 5 years. Part 4. The missing years. 13 o'clock to 16 o'clock. Narrator VO. From 1859 to 1864. There are no records of Margaret, but then she reappears in the heart of Civil War territory. Letters discovered from soldiers in Virginia describe her vividly. She walked through the battlefield, barefoot, untouched. Told me I'd survive the war if I walked away tonight. I did. Everyone else in my company didn't. She was last seen on the steps of a burnt chapel in Richmond, murmuring to herself, "They still don't understand. I didn't give them freedom. I just showed them they had it." Then she was gone again. No body, no grave, just silence. Part 5. Legacy and theories. To 16 o'clock to 19 o'clock. Narrator VO. So who or what was Margaret Thorne? Some believe she was clairvoyant. Others say she was a time-sensitive empath, sensing moments of future potential. A fringe theory claims she was an escaped subject from a secret government experimenter, forerunner to modern-day remote viewing and psychic warfare. But perhaps the most compelling theory comes from a local historian. Margaret wasn't magic. She was free. She simply didn't live by our rules, and once others felt that, they changed. Her presence caused people to question their limits, their suffering, their potential. That's how she sold freedom, not for money, but by reminding them it existed. Outro menos 19. 00 menos 20. Narrator VO. Margaret Thorne left no descendants, no photographs, no grave. But her legend persists in town records, in dreams, in quiet stories passed down. End. Maybe that's the point. Maybe some people don't exist to be explained. Maybe they exist to show us what we're capable of. In 1923, nearly 60 years after Margaret Thorne's last recorded sighting, a series of handwritten journals surfaced in a private collection, auctioned off in Chicago, signed only with an M. The journals were filled with cryptic entries, diagrams, of human auras, symbols that matched no known alphabet, and strange references to light-borne keys and frequencies of choice. One entry read, "They say I give them freedom, but what I sell is a mirror, the kind that reflects the soul without time." Historians have debated for years whether these belonged to Margaret Thorne, but a handwriting analyst compared the journal to her known signature from a school record and the match was 95% certain. Even stranger, one of the diagrams showed a detailed layout of neural pathways far beyond what 19th century science understood at the time. How could she have known? Part 7. Was Margaret Thorne part of a secret network? 23:32, 26 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. Some believe Margaret wasn't alone. A classified memo uncovered in 1996 refers to a Civil War-era group called the Occult, rumored underground circle of sensitives, clairvoyant, and precognitive individuals believed to be used by both the Union and Confederate sides for non-traditional intelligence. Margaret's name appears once in a coded cipher, M. Thorne of Oakenbridge. Frequency stable. Can disrupt fixed minds. What does that mean? Frequency stable might imply she operated on a different mental or vibrational state. Some researchers now believe Margaret and others like her may have exhibited signs of what we'd now call quantum consciousness or nonlinear cognition. If that's true, Margaret Thorne wasn't just unusual. She may have been the first documented post-human mind. Part 8. Why her story disappeared. 26 minutes and 0 seconds to 28 minutes and 30 seconds. Narrator VO. Why isn't Margaret Thorne a household name? According to archived letters from Oakenbridge's town council, her story was intentionally erased. One letter, dated 1870, reads, "We are losing grip on reason. People stop obeying laws. They say Margaret showed them they don't have to. This is dangerous. Margaret didn't break the law, but she broke belief systems, and for those in power, that's often worse." Local churches began preaching against her memory. Schools removed her from town history, and eventually she was forgotten. But you can't erase a ripple, and Margaret Thorne's ripple has never stopped. Part 9. The woman who sold freedom. 28 minutes and 30 seconds to 29 minutes and 30 seconds. Narrator VO. She never asked for money. She never wrote a book. She didn't form a cult or build a following. Yet everyone who crossed her path left changed. Her legacy isn't one of magic tricks or miracles. It's something stranger. She reminded people that the keys to their cages were always in their hands, that the bars weren't made of iron but of fear, and that freedom wasn't something granted by governments, gods, or gurus. It was simply a choice. Final reflections. 29 minutes and 30 seconds to 2030. Narrator VO. Margaret Thorne is a mystery not because she broke science but because she didn't need it. She didn't fit the data, she didn't fit the system, and so they buried her. But now you're hearing her story, and the question is no longer, who was Margaret Thorne? It's, this section deepens the philosophical, paranormal, and social impact layers of the story, while building toward an emotional and chilling close that keeps viewers thinking long after the video ends. Part 10. Echoes in the Modern World. 30 minutes and 30 seconds to 33 minutes and 30 seconds. Narrator 5. On, strangely, Margaret Thorne never really disappeared. Over the decades, people across the United States have reported visitations in dreams, encounters with a silent girl in old-fashioned clothing, and mysterious notes slipped under doors, signed only with a single letter. In 1969, a psychologist in upstate New York documented the testimony of a patient who claimed a woman stepped out of her body during a near-death experience and whispered, "You've forgotten what you are. Choose." In 2011, an encrypted file leaked on a conspiracy forum titled Project M. Thorne contained diagrams eerily similar to those in the 19th century journals, suggesting someone, somewhere, is still studying her ... or protecting her legacy. And recently, a viral Reddit post told of a man who swears a young woman sat next to him on a train and told him to quit the job that was killing him inside. He said she disappeared between 2 stops. The conductor swore no one was on board. Part 11. The Science We Still Don't Understand. 33 minutes and 30 seconds to 36 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. What if Margaret Thorne was just ahead of her time? Today, physicists talk about non-local consciousness, quantum entanglement of thought, and biophotonic communication. The idea that the human body emits light-based signals. Modern research is catching up to what Margaret seemed to embody instinctively. A mind not bound by time. A nervous system that responded to something outside our known senses. Could she have been the first documented neuroevolutionary leap, a human bridge between instinct and awareness? The tragedy isn't that we didn't understand her, it's that we tried to erase her, instead of learn from her. Part 12. What Margaret may have known. 36. 00-38 e 30 narrator VOS. In one journal entry, perhaps the most haunting, Margaret wrote, "Time is the lie that keeps people in cages. Show them how to step sideways, and they will never need keys again." Some believe Margaret operated on a different dimension of perception, one that made her appear unexplainable. By 19th century standards, she wasn't performing miracles, she was simply accessing what we all have, but forget. Imagine living with no fear of the future, no regret of the past, no regret of the past, no obedience to the systems around you. What would that make you? Finale. The whisper still lingers, minus 38 to 30 to 40 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. Margaret Thorne remains a ghost of our history, but perhaps she was never here to stay. Maybe she was a messenger passing through briefly to remind us of something ancient and true, that freedom is not granted, it's remembered. And when the world tries to silence you, when science can't measure you, when power tries to shame you, remember the girl who never blinked. She didn't fight, she didn't argue, she didn't run. Margaret Thorne rarely spoke, but when she did, her words were layered, poetic, prophetic, and unnerving. She once drew a circle with 7 lines spiraling inward, and told a woman, "This is the door you forgot how to walk through." That same symbol, 7 lines into a spiral, has since been found carved into trees near Oakenbridge, scratched into hospital walls, and even drawn in chalk at civil protest sites around the world. No one claims credit, but witnesses always describe a young woman in old clothes nearby. What if this symbol wasn't art but a trigger? A psychic imprinted geometric code to awaken the unconscious. Some theorists believe Margaret used visual mnemonics, drawings, and symbols that bypassed the rational mind and reprogram belief at a subliminal level. If true, she didn't speak to your ears, she spoke to the part of you that science doesn't even recognize yet. Part 14. The transaction was never money. 42 minutes and 30 seconds to 45 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. She sold freedom, they said, but no one ever saw her take payment, so what was the cost? Many who claimed to be freed by Margaret also described losing things. A man who walked away from a war he no longer believed in. A woman who left a marriage that had stolen her identity. A priest who abandoned doctrine to listen to silence instead. What they gave up wasn't material. They gave up false security, illusions, cages. Margaret didn't give people new lives. She took the old ones away and left them standing, naked in front of themselves. That was the price. And maybe that's why some people feared her more than they feared death. Part 15. The real reason they erased her. 45 minutes and 0 seconds to 47 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator 5. Margaret Thorne was erased not because she was unexplainable, but because she was dangerously understandable. She didn't need institutions, she didn't need doctors, she didn't need the church, the school, or the government. And once people listened to her, they didn't need them either. Freedom, she showed, wasn't rebellion, that it was participation. And in a world built on obedience, the greatest threat is someone who simply walks away. Part 16. Margaret's final message. 47 minutes and 0 seconds to 49 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. One final note found beneath a loose floorboard in what's believed to be Margaret's childhood home. Read. There is no prison but belief, and no key but choice, no signature, no date, just the feeling that someone had waited decades to be found by the right person. Margaret didn't leave behind followers, only questions. But maybe that's exactly what she wanted, because the moment you start asking the right ones, you don't need her anymore. The final fade. 49 minutes and 0 seconds to 50 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. They tried to label her, they tried to study her, they tried to forget her, but Margaret Thorne isn't gone, she never was. She's every moment you realize the door was open the whole time. She's the whisper in your bones when you walk away from something that never served you. She's the space between fear and decision. And if you ever hear her in your dreams, you've always been free. Believer. There's one detail we haven't mentioned. In a 1982 psychological study on spontaneous child prodigies, one researcher recorded a 6-year-old girl in rural Virginia who drew a map of Oakenbridge 1846, roads, buildings, and landmarks. That hadn't existed in over 100 years. Her parents said she had never been to Pennsylvania. Never even seen a map before. When asked where she learned to draw it, she replied, "She showed me. The girl with no shoes." The child's name, Margaret. Same first name, same eyes. According to the researcher's notes, same silence before speaking. Is it possible? Margaret never left. That she's looping through time, reappearing wherever. The world starts to forget what freedom truly means. Part 18. Margaret as an archetype, 52 minutes and 0 seconds to 54 minutes and 30 seconds. Narrator VO. Let's consider something radical. What if Margaret Thorne wasn't a girl, or even a human? What if she's a pattern? Carl Jung spoke of archetypes, symbols born from the collective unconscious. They rise when the world needs them. They take form when belief reaches a boiling point, and then they vanish again. The freedom bringer, the silent catalyst. The mirror with eyes. Margaret may not have been born, she may have manifested, and if so, she's part of us, the part that remembers who we were before we were told who to be. Part 19. Connection to real events, 54 minutes and 30 seconds to 57 minutes and 0 seconds. Narrator VO. Across history, figures like Margaret appear, a woman who walked across Europe during World War II, giving strangers a single sentence and changing the course of their lives. A man in 1913 who told a bank clerk to leave town tonight, just hours before the building was bombed. An unknown child in 2005 who appeared in 3 separate hospital security tapes but had no medical file, no parent, and vanished within minutes. Each time, they leave behind no evidence, only testimonies, only a ripple. And each time, those who listened changed everything. Could Margaret have been the first? Or just the one who stayed long enough for us to notice? Part Y. The door that's still open. Why? Narrator VO. This story, like all great mysteries, doesn't end. Not because we don't have enough data, but because it was never about answers, it was about remembrance. Margaret Thorne may never be proven, and she may never return in the way we expect, but maybe she doesn't have to, because, if you're hearing this, if something inside you stirs when you hear her name, if you feel like you've met her in a dream or a decision, then maybe she's already here. In you. You are the key. You are the door, and the world is waiting. Margaret Thorne didn't leave instructions, she left impulses, and now those impulses live inside those who've heard her story. You, if you've ever paused at a decision and felt a stillness in your chest, if you've ever felt the presence of something watching with love, but no words, if you've ever dreamed of walking out of a life you didn't choose, might not be coincidence. That might be Margaret, or something like her. Part P. A symbol appears again. PYAY. Narrator VO. After this story first spread in underground forums, something strange happened. People began posting images online. A spiral with 7 lines drawn in chalk outside schools, etched into condensation on windows. Left anonymously in library books. No one claimed responsibility, but the pattern matched Margaret's original sketch exactly. More importantly, those who found it reported waking up the next day with clarity, breaking addictions, leaving toxic families, walking away from jobs that drained them. The symbol isn't just an image. It's a choice point. Part D. What freedom really was. Why? Narrator VO. So what did Margaret really sell? Not liberty in the political sense. Not independence from a ruler. What she offered was unshackling from unconsciousness. You've been told what to believe, what's possible, what's practical, what's real. Margaret's power wasn't in breaking those beliefs, it was in asking, what if none of them were ever true to begin with, and then vanishing because she never wanted to be followed. She wanted to be remembered in action. Part A. The final puzzle. Why? Narrator VO. Hidden within her final known drawing was a message. It was dismissed at the time as gibberish, but decoded in 2021 by a linguistics professor. It read, "There are no saviors, only reminders. You will meet me again when you become me." Margaret doesn't return to change the world. She returns when you're ready to change yours. That's why she appears in dreams, in quiet moments, in strange coincidences, and in stories like this, and perhaps, right now. Part Y. Looping the ending. Why? Narrator V. Oh, so here we are, back where we began. A storm on the hills of Oakenbridge, a silent girl with eyes that see too much, and a whisper that follows you home. There's a term used in folklore, the liminal space that exists between not here, not there, crossroads, thresholds, mirrors, dreams. Margaret lived in those spaces. She wasn't fully in our world, but she wasn't outside of it either. She appeared only when someone stood at the edge of decision, the moment before awakening, the breath before rebellion. What kind of being lives only in moments like that? Not a prophet, not a ghost, but something more ancient. A threshold entity. And if she is that, then we don't meet her by chance. We summon her every time we come to the edge of our own programming. Part Y. The Forbidden File. P. YYY. Narrator VO. In 2008, a whistleblower from an intelligence think tank leaked a redacted file titled Project Liminal Vector. Subject empty. It contained references to controlled perception fractures, localized timeline resets, and this line, subject does not follow causality. Subject activates individual agency in surrounding persons. Subject disrupts system adherence. The final paragraph was blacked out except for one sentence left visible. Margaret Thorne is not a person. She is a function. A function. Does that mean Margaret isn't someone but something that emerges from consciousness itself, like a natural law, like gravity, like memory, like the urge to be free? Part Y. Margaret in the digital age. Why? Narrator VO. Since this story surfaced online, strange things have begun happening. Dozens of viewers across different countries reported hearing a voice before the video ends, even when the audio had not yet reached that point. Others claim their power flickered the moment the spiral appeared on screen. Some say their dreams shifted as if a presence entered through the screen itself. Coincidence? Or has Margaret evolved? An age of wires and waves. Maybe she doesn't walk anymore, maybe she transmits, and this video, your act of watching, may have been the invitation she needed. Part Y. Margaret as code. Why? Narrator VO. Margaret Thorne may be more than memory, more than myth. She may be code embedded into the human psyche, activated by certain sounds, shapes, or words. The spiral, the phrase, "You've always been free." The strange silence before a decision that will change your life. Every time you witness those things, the code runs. And when it does, the world loses a little of its grip. You forget what you were supposed to be and remember what you've always been. Not obedient, not broken, not trapped. The more we study Margaret Thorne, the more we uncover a pattern that repeats not in history books, but in human behavior. A pattern of awakening. Across centuries, there have always been those who break ranks without explanation. Change course with no warning. Seem to hear a voice no one else can. They don't cite doctrine, they don't follow movements. But after their choice, others begin to wake too. Is Margaret the voice behind that moment, or is Margaret the name we give to that phenomenon itself? Because once you've heard her story, you begin to see her everywhere. Part P. The memory you're not supposed to have. Why? Narrator V. O. People report something strange after encountering Margaret's legend. Familiarity. Some say, "I feel like I've known her all my life." Others say, "I dreamt about her before I ever saw this video." Still others say nothing, just that something shifted, quietly, permanently. There's a term for this, cryptomnesia, forgotten memory, returning as if it were new. But what if it's not from this life? What if Margaret isn't a story you just heard, but a story you've been part of before? A loop, a return, a whisper echoing through time. We meet again. Part D. The collective activation. P. Why? Narrator VO. Margaret's story doesn't end with Margaret, it spreads. Viewers have begun sharing her name in unexpected places, scribbled in notebooks at universities, left on notes inside free library books. Tattooed into skin. Embedded in the code of open source projects. One community even started tracking reported Margaret events, spontaneous life changes that occur after encountering her name, her symbol, or this story. Some say this video isn't content, it's a trigger. A silent signal activating a dormant part of your consciousness, a collective reawakening disguised as entertainment. If that's true, then this isn't a documentary, it's a ritual, and you're now a participant. Part A. The final reflection. Why? Narrator V. O. So ask yourself, has something stirred in you since you began watching? Has something shifted quietly, beneath language? Margaret's not coming, she's already here. She appears when you quit the job, when you walk out the door, when you turn the phone off and sit in silence, when you speak the truth no one expects, because Margaret is a girl. She's the moment you stop obeying the lie. Part P. The spiral is not a symbol. Why? Narrator VO. One final truth. The spiral she drew. It's not a symbol, it's not art, It's a map, not to a place, but to a process, one that leads inward, layer by layer, through illusion, fear, memory, until you reach the center. And what's at the center? Unmasked, unchained, unafraid, in the final analysis. Margaret Thorne was never trying to be seen. She was trying to reflect. Everyone who met her described the same thing. It felt like she already knew me, like she wasn't looking at my face, but the asterisk version of me I was afraid to become. That's not magic, that's mirroring. And what do mirrors do best? They don't show you what you believe, they show you what's hiding behind belief. So if you've made it this far, turn your screen off, find a mirror, look into your own eyes, and ask, without flinching, what part of me have I buried to stay safe if the silence echoes? Margaret is listening. Part Y, becoming the whisper. PYPY. Narrator VO. What happens next is up to you. Some will forget, some will call it fiction, some will laugh, but a few of you, you'll feel the air change in the room. You'll walk differently after this. You'll begin to see the spiral not just as a symbol, but as a trail. You'll leave it behind for someone else to find. A chalk spiral on a sidewalk, a book passed anonymously with a note inside, a word whispered to a stranger on the brink of decision. You will become the whisper, and when someone asks, who told you to do this, you'll smile, because Margaret didn't ask for credit, she asked for carriers. Part Y, the cult without a center. PYPY. Narrator VO. Margaret's story is now being shared across the world in whispers, fragments, glances, but there is no church, no leader, no altar, just a pattern. A cult with no structure. A revolution with no icon. A myth that spreads without needing to be believed. This is the anti-myth. One that dissolves the very idea of following and replaces it with remembering. That's the final act of freedom. To stop asking for signs and start becoming one. Part Y. Margaret is a virus of truth. PYPY. Narrator V. Oh, let's strip away everything. If Margaret Thorne is not a girl, not a ghost, not a symbol, not even a myth, what if she's a viral idea entity so deeply resonant it spreads like software installing itself through art, through story, through the mind of anyone willing to question reality's rules, a self-replicating truth virus, mutating. Aapting. Surviving annihilation. Through disguise she wears the mask of memory, but she is code, and now she's in you. Part Y, the final door. PYHAY. Narrator V. Oh, if everything we've told you is true, or if none of it is, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you feel right now. Is it dread, curiosity, peace? That's the final door. Don't look for Margaret Thorne out there. Don't try to prove she was real. Instead, ask yourself, why did I feel like I already knew her? Then stand up, breathe. This is the first successful replication. Subject Thorne. Year of emergence, 1846. Signal type, consciousness anomaly. Effect, contagious liberation. Status, active in 137 known nodes. And counting. Subject ID, Margaret Thorne. Status, impossible to terminate. Profile, adolescent, female presenting, aura of disruption. Last sighted Karachi, Reykjavik, Prague, and a London hospital. Simultaneously,